I kind of look at AI less as, rub a little AI on it and like marketing hype. I feel like there gets to be too much of that. I think picking a narrow, achievable set at the beginning so you don't fall into this like boil the ocean, let's build an AI agent that does everything and solves everyone's problems, because then I find teams just get paralyzed. Some of my worst experiences as a PM was we didn't spend enough time thinking about how we're going to communicate the value to the customer. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh shit, how are we actually going to like charge for this? Like, how are we going to go talk about it to a customer? I feel like as a vendor, this is the number one question on every buyer's mind.
AutoSkills helps teams go from AI curious to AI ready. We run tailored workshops to uncover where AI has the biggest impact in your business, whether that's automating repetitive tasks, cutting hours out of your daily workflows, or choosing the right mix of tools and custom solutions. It's practical, hands-on, and built to get your team using AI for work that matters. Book your free 30-minute AI readiness audit at autoskills.ai. For many startups, landing a big customer comes with a catch. They now have to prove robust security. That means endless questionnaires, policy documents, and audits. Work that slows down founders and distracts teams from building. Jeremy has spent his career taking the friction out of complex work, building products like OneDrive at Microsoft and GitHub Actions at GitHub. At Vanta, that means rethinking how companies earn trust. But not every task could be automated. That was until AI changed the equation. Today, Vanta uses AI to draft policies, respond to security questionnaires, and surface risks with accuracy, shifting the model from you do the work to Vanta does it for you. If you're leading AI adoption in your org, listen in for a playbook. You'll learn about how to choose the right AI projects, how to build trust with your team during this transformation process, and how to use Jeremy's 3-pillar framework for getting your team AI ready. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
My pleasure. Well, to start off, can you give a quick introduction of yourself and a quick background, what led you to where you are today at Vanta?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the Chief Product Officer at Vanta. Our core mission is to help businesses earn and prove trust. Some of your audience may not quite know what that means. I think about this for startups. A lot of times you have a big customer that's coming in, they want to use their product, they're super excited, but they're not sure about the security of that product. So we help customers basically build their security program and go through a successful audit with SOC 2 or ISO or whatever they need to kind of prove trust to those customers. And then we do the same thing for like large enterprise customers that have big GRC and security teams. How do they run those large complex programs? And yeah, for me, at my role, I lead product design and engineering. So kind of thinking across the entire product experience. And yeah, for my background, I don't know, I guess I was like a geek kid. I like taught myself how to write code in high school back in like the late 90s, back when websites were big, started a little business like building websites for people, kind of did that in college, led to a startup that was a lot of fun and taught me a lot, but didn't really go anywhere. But led to a bunch of job offers, and then kind of was at Microsoft, worked on a bunch of products, a lot of 0 to 1 things. So was on the team to build OneDrive from kind of like day one to about 10 or 15,000 or 10 or 15 million customers. Worked on Azure for a while, worked on Office for a while, and then went to GitHub, built a bunch of new products there. So GitHub Actions, which is like continuous testing and deployment, worked on GitHub Codespaces, the container registry, led the acquisition of NPM and worked on improving NPM while I was there. And then, yeah, after that, been at Vanta for now 2 years, and it's been amazing, fun experience. Just the thing that activates me is kind of like building new products. So I think my career is always kind of tracked to that. And I love that combination of doing PM, design, and engineering. I feel like that nexus and triad of those 3 things is so important. And I love to do a little bit of all of them. Like even now, I still try to like write code at least a few times, like every week on like little personal projects and things.
Well, a really exciting time for folks who like to combine all of those functions into one. And I'm excited to dig into that because I know that's something that you've chatted about. And I also tend to agree with some of the thoughts you've you've shared. So we can definitely make sure we discuss that. But I do want to call out, I mean, you've worked on some products, some very successful products. So we use GitHub Actions quite extensively here at Autoblocks. We've built some tooling around it for namely our regression testing. The CI/CD integration is integrated with GitHub Actions. And also we use Vanta. So huge shout out to Vanta. I think we were able to get HIPAA compliance and SOC 2 Type 2 certification in less than a year after we founded through our partnership with Vanta. So amazing product. So automation has been something that you've worked on definitely during your time at GitHub, GitHub Actions. It's automations at the ethos of that product offering. Now at Vanta, you're working on the AI features there, a lot of automation there. And Vanta as a product, it's even pre-AI was automating a lot of the manual compliance tasks and workloads for teams. What's it been like navigating the journey since, let's say, like the ChatGPT moment and LLMs exploding in popularity?
It's been exciting. I was fortunate to kind of be at GitHub in the early days before we launched Copilot. So I got to see ChatGPT 2.0 before kind of a lot of other people did, and when it actually didn't really work. And we were like, should we be doing this incubation project or not? I wasn't working on it. Ugo was. He's a great founder of like Expo, who we just did like a big partnership with. They do AI pen tests. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And I still remember that moment at GitHub when we first got like that early view of 3.0 and we were using it internally. And we were just like, oh my God, this is real. Like this can actually become something. And then 3.5. And then when I was at Vanta too, I was just seeing the moment. I think for Vanta, I don't know, I kind of look at AI less as, rub a little AI on it and like marketing hype. I feel like there gets to be too much of that. I try to view it as, hey, we have this brand new tool in the toolbox we've never had before. And how can we use this to solve customer problems we couldn't solve before or solve them better? So even when I go back to Vanta, like our core mission from the beginning was to like automate this entire process, like continuous control monitoring, like making sure that you're not doing a once a year audit, but you will always know your audit readiness. You're always improving your security and automation. But there's all these things we couldn't automate before. Like you'd get a questionnaire from a customer. You'd have to manually go fill that out. Maybe you're the one sending the questionnaires and your customers are just dropping in documents and not responding. And you need to ask questions about their security posture. When you're like a startup like yourself, when you're first creating those new policies, you're not sure what to go create. We had templates and things, but now we can customize the program, help you create the evidence, help you stay on top of it better than we ever have before. And I think the philosophy we've taken and really embraced is Vanta does it for you. And like now with AI, we can do even more for you because, as a startup founder, you care about security, you know what I mean? But what you really care about is your product market fit and like moving the business forward. And you don't want to be spending all of your time or probably even a lot of your time on security. You want it just to happen. And you want Vanta or a product like Vanta to like come in and do it for you. And so when I think about what AI has enabled us to go do, whether it be like document creation or generation, automatically looking at them, helping respond to these questionnaires, it's been a fundamental kind of like game changer into a level of automation that we could provide for people.
Yeah, you touched on something there that we have heard several times in our previous conversations around finding the right use cases for AI. I think a lot of organizations, they have this misconception that you should be trying out AI projects in some sort of a sandbox. Maybe you have an engineer, designer, product person working on a specific AI feature, which is maybe separate from the product altogether. And the tendency is that most of those experiments tend to fail because you're not necessarily scoping the right use case. You're not integrating into the workflow as seamlessly as you should. What are some of the principles that you have ingrained in the organization in order to prevent that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing is, understanding what you're going to be using customer data for and what you're not. I feel like as a vendor selling an AI product, this is the number one question on every buyer's mind, especially the larger, more enterprise customers is like, are you training on my data? I think you can build amazing products that aren't training on customer data. That's the approach we've taken at Vanta. And with synthetic data, with golden data sets and everything else that we can go do, or customers that want to partner more closely with us, you can really build a great product. So I think that's a top of mind thing. I think finding a tractable use case that gives customers a ton of value and really focusing on AI quality. a lot of what I hear from customers is they hear a lot of amazing pitches. They go in and maybe they see a flashy demo, but then when they go in and start using the product, they're like, it actually isn't kind of delivering the results that I want. And so one of the things that we've done is focus internally very heavily on quality. So if I just take like questionnaire automation for us, the two key metrics for us are coverage and accuracy. And the way we think about accuracy is how often are people accepting an answer without editing it? And then we also have another metric that's like maybe they edited it and how much did they edit it? So we can get an idea of like the delta. And so I think really understanding what that customer is going for and the value. So like our first AI projects, we kind of had three going. One of them was questionnaire automation, where it's like, hey, you received this. We already know a ton about your program. We can just answer the questions for you. AI is great, obviously, at generating text and understanding documents. Vendor risk management is the same thing. It's just you're the one sending it. So maybe you're looking at documents from someone and trying to understand security posture. The other one we tried to do early that actually was hard was like, oh, let's just build a Copilot that does everything. And I think it became this like boil the ocean project that we ended up kind of like shutting down after like a month or two and just being like, hey, we don't have the maturity and knowledge to go do this. We also learned our data wasn't clean enough. Like the way we had connected all the data on the back end, it wasn't structured in a way where AI could really be beneficial. And this was like maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago or something like that. So still like earlier, there's better tools, there's better startups that are helping better tools for this today. And so I think those were, some of the big things is like find a project that has real customer value and find some design partners that really want to make it work with you. We found some people who are really going to push us to the limit, ask the hard questions, really like push the product. And I think that has been really helpful in questionnaire automation or vendor risk. And now we've kind of transformed it instead of like dumping some docs and ask some questions. Now we can extract findings. Now we know what's going on in your program and can customize it and be like, oh, this vendor is used for this type of data. Actually, these are the type of risks or the questions you should ask. Or even, hey, we've dug through all the documents of this vendor. And so instead of sending them 100 questionnaire, you can only send them 6 because we've already answered all these other questions and the vendor can go edit them if they didn't think they were right. I think there's a big part about building trust. I'm sure you've thought about this as well, but like having citations and sources throughout the whole product is really important, especially in security. I'd say security buyers are going to be a little bit more skeptical on like, hey, is this thing giving the right answer? So we're much more forward in our experience. And so, I think that also another interesting thing to think about is what is the user experience that you want to have with the AI? Like chat sometimes is great, but I feel like it can be limiting at times. Like if our experience for creating a new policy for security was like a blank page and just talk to a chatbot about it, like that feels kind of intimidating to me versus like, hey, here's a template. And then we're starting to ask you questions, which is what we do. And we're like, hey, who should be the approver for your policies? Do you have like, are you fully remote or are you not? That's going to determine if you need a physical security policy or not. And so I think that more you can kind of guide customers and even, I think Cursor, Windsurf, a bunch of other tools have done this well, but having kind of controls in the chat experience, if you are going to be primarily chat, is helpful too. Instead of just being like, hey, who should be the approver for this policy? Letting people know like, oh, it's usually, the head of HR or legal or the CEO or whatever for a company of your size. I think what people have done with memory is like a big thing that we're focused on now as well of like, how do we drive memory about your program into everything so it doesn't feel like, hey, I'm in an agent and I'm going ahead and like making a couple answers and questions here and I don't know about the rest of your program, but we start to build a larger context and understanding of everything. So I guess back to your thing, I'd say pick some small projects that like offer real customer value. I think a lot of people start with internal projects. I think those can be useful. We have a ton of internal, like we'll talk about like the PM team and engineering team and all the great things that they're doing there. But I also think finding something that's customer facing just pushes you harder, right? Like find a customer that's a design partner that's going to ask the hard questions, going to force you to really make quality great.
In other words, just tightening the feedback loop as well, right? Just getting...
Definitely. So we launched the Vanta AI agent in June, and we've had a bunch of other agentic-esque experiences. We're like, hey, we're going off and answering questionnaires, doing these other things. This is our first one where it has like a lot deeper tool support and can do a lot more with more data sources. And, the team literally every day reviews what people are asking, you know what I mean? And is like digging into that and being like, okay, what are we asking? What are the themes that are coming across? Where is the agent refusing? Where is it not? And I think that tight loop is really important because it builds confidence. Like if you use something a couple times and you're not getting what you want out of it, you're going to like churn and not go back. And I think the thing that we've seen is that because we've invested in quality and are more comfortable refusing, like I would rather tell a customer, hey, sorry, we can't answer questions about this yet, but we're going to get there, than try to answer it and screw it up. I feel like that's like confidence degrading versus like trust building. And so we've noticed that like as people use the agent more, we are now seeing massive upticks in the DAUs of those customers. Like they use it and they're like, oh, this works. And they're statistically significantly higher to be logging into the product every day, using the agent more and getting just more value out of Vanta. So I do think there's a real stickiness to these features, but you got to make sure you get that like early value for customers.
Yeah, I want to go back to a point that you made around using customer data for certain AI workflows. This seems to be something that comes up pretty often as a big challenge for organizations. For some organizations that we chatted with, this is the number one challenge that they're wrestling with is on the data side, how do they deal with customer data? How do they ensure that their data infrastructure is in a place that they can leverage it in the most effective way possible? Are there any things that you have seen at GitHub or Vanta that have worked well in terms of just setting up the playing field for an organization to be able to leverage data in the most effective way, and maybe some heuristics for how to know when to use customer data, when to not use customer data, and if you're using it, to ensure that it's used in a thoughtful way?
Yeah, I think picking a narrow, achievable set at the beginning so you don't fall into this like boil the ocean, let's build an AI agent that does everything and solves everyone's problems. Because then I find teams just get paralyzed. Doesn't matter how big of a company you are or how small, like it's easy for that to be paralyzing. So I think picking some clear jobs to be done. We start by modeling kind of the key questions and responses. So if we were building something for a CISO or a startup founder, would be like, what do we think are the top questions they're going to ask? And then what does a good response look like? And then we actually have a set, because for Vanta, this is a little bit different. Like when I was at GitHub, I started as an engineer. Doesn't mean I still talk to customers all the time, but I felt like I had a deeper understanding. I've never worked in a GRC team before. And a lot of people at Vanta, aren't, just because you're in the PM team or the engineering team doesn't mean you're an expert in deep GRC knowledge. So we have a whole team of subject matter experts that have been invaluable. And so they report to our CISO, obviously because they're in the secured organization. They help with go-to-market activities, but they also have a separate team that's our product SMEs, we call them, like subject matter experts, and we leverage them heavily. So they are fully integrated into our eval feedback process. So they come through, they'll look at the questions and answers in the aggregate. They'll help us build the golden data sets that we need, and help us make sure to like rate the quality of individual answers, where we're like, hey, if you were an enterprise customer receiving this questionnaire, would you expect the answer to be this or that? And so I think that's been a really key unlock, is like having them in there, building a strong, fast eval loop for tools as well. Like today we use Human Loop. We've built some custom tools around that as well. And I think just being able to quickly iterate and push out changes. I think another thing that we found, and I don't know if this is true for everyone, but it has been from a lot of people I've talked about, is that so there's this whole layer of it understanding the question to determine which other sub-agent to kind of go ask more specifics and then pulling it back. So building that plan has been really helpful. But I think that oftentimes like some of the biggest quality gains outside of the like prompt and some of the other things we've talked about are actually just from being on like the latest models or finding the right model. Like there are some models that are just better for code generation. Like I think everyone kind of feels like Anthropic is really leading here. That's definitely been our experience as well. But I think early days, like if I think of like a year ago, a lot of the conversations I had with people, it's like, oh, maybe we need to build our own model or we need to fine tune or whatever else. And then like, you go from 3.5 to 4 and it was just like, oh no, that solved all the problems. And like, it wasn't, an issue there. So I think really leaning into your golden data set, your prompt tuning, your eval loop, thinking about chunking, having subject matter experts if you need them, that type eval loop where like the PM and the engineers are just spending every day looking at like, what are people asking, whether it be like, anonymized in the right ways where you need to go do that or not, and understanding like what themes are coming up and then filling out the kind of like data set to me, those are all things that have been pretty transformative to us, like advancing the quality of our system and like being able just to build new features. We also kind of waited to platformize. This was, it's debatable, like I come from developer tools at my last job and like, have worked on like big systems. So I'm a little bit more of like a platform guy at heart, but I feel like making something that works for customers is the most important thing. So we actually had in our early days, like 2 years ago or so, our VRM AI system was pretty different than our Q Auto one. And we were kind of like, okay, let's kind of let not 1,000 flowers bloom, I guess let 2 flowers bloom. But like, they knowledge shared, they talked, they did different things. And then we learned certain things worked in some cases, some should be platformized. And then we decided to go back and be like, okay, here's the common thing. Let's go build that. So our AI platform, I think, has evolved from specific use cases being successful versus kind of starting of like, oh, we have to build this big platform. Everyone has to wait on the platform. And then you get a little bit more disconnected from the customer. So in retrospect, I think we definitely made the right call there of having a little bit more engineering debt in order to move quickly and making sure what we're building and only platformizing when we have that like high conviction that like, yes, this is something that multiple teams, multiple areas of the products need.
Yeah. Taking more of the crawl, walk, run approach on that front. And you talk a bit about the models improving and how that's improving hallucination rates, how that's improving your eval results. And I want to also dig into the relationship between those subject matter experts and your EPD organization as well. One of the challenges we hear about often is how to ensure that that feedback loop is tight. A lot of times those folks are using disparate tools and just bridging the gap is important. But before we dig into that, I'm curious, as the models improve, are you also finding that the use cases that you're able to apply those models to, those are transforming as well? Or does that not necessarily change so much?
I think the use cases have definitely changed and expanded. Like, one of our AI teams is kind of like sending regular updates out to actually the entire company. And we cover these in our all hands of just like what's new and what's happening. And if you're not deep into all these pieces, which everyone at Vanta is not, even with an EPD, every team is not doing that because we have kind of standard features we still need to build and ship that give like a ton of value that aren't AI related. And so one of the big things that one of our AI leader does, Ignacio, is he really tries to go out of his way to be like, here are brand new capabilities and problems we could solve that you may not know are solvable, and obviously I feel like code generation continues to improve quickly, different models, we kind of like pair them off with each other. I feel like document understanding, especially for much larger documents, like I think it was pretty well known like a year ago, there was this kind of like lost in the middle problem, with ChatGPT, probably around 3.5, maybe also with 4, with like really large documents where it would over index on content in the beginning and the end and things like that. And we definitely saw some issues there that like have definitely improved and enable us to generate and understand larger documents. I mean, I think computer use is super exciting. That is an area that, we've been doing a lot of work in and feels like, I don't know what the right estimate is, 6 months behind, a year behind, kind of like where core LLMs are. But something we're definitely investing in and spending a lot of time to think about and to prototype and work with customers that are interested in kind of, being more cutting edge there and want like early access. I think computer use will probably be out, most enterprises are going to be the most skeptical of allowing that. But I think the more down market focused you are, if you're talking to startups and smaller companies, they're going to be much more open to that and like see the efficiency gain that they can get from that is more valuable to them than the kind of like potential risk exposure of like a big bank, I'm guessing will probably be, someone to adopt that a little bit later, at least for their most sensitive data.
Yeah, I was super excited about computer use as well. I think it's 6 months to a year sounds about right. One of the things that we're finding to be frustrating working with computer use is just generally much slower than you might anticipate, right? But again, I think in 6 months, this is very likely to be a solved problem.
And like the voice conversations have been interesting. Like we don't have as much use for voice in Vanta, but we've definitely like had a couple engineers do some prototypes where, you for security, you have to do these things called tabletop exercises. And people have asked like, what are those? And like, we just kind of like whipped up a quick little prototype where it's like, hey, you can call this phone number or like start up a call. And like this person will like ask you the questions to go through a tabletop exercise. Or we've debated like, hey, for a lot of audits, you have to do like an interview. And is it helpful to actually kind of do that with like a fake AI versus just kind of like some prep notes where we can be like, hey, here are things you might get asked about in an interview with an auditor, or they will ask about your program and what the commitments are. So I think even stuff that's not like, hey, we're not like a voice product, but I think as these areas mature, it's fun to kind of think about like, oh, these could be like delighters, but also like real useful things. Like people learn differently, and is like a voice interaction more helpful in some of these cases? Security awareness training is something that's big. We have a bunch of built-in security awareness training. I think there's been many companies who have been looking at like, hey, can we dynamically generate the videos? Because people do want to customize them. And like now there's a lot more we can do with AI video. And what if you could dynamically generate some of those videos and it feels even more personalized to your company? So I think there's a lot of things that people maybe wouldn't think about, like Vanta and like a security company, but like actually like there's a lot that you can go do if you kind of like broaden your perspective of all the different things going on in AI and how they can help customers.
Is there an example that comes to mind as maybe the most mind-blowing or impressive step function improvement in AI tools that you've seen since you started incorporating them into products?
For us, probably a couple different moments. I mean, I think when one of the early ones was when we would just be able to drop in just a ton of really large documents and then just answer questions. I know this seems a little bit outdated now, but if you roll back to like a year and a half ago, you get these massive SOC 2 reports, these pen tests and everything. And we kind of got the quality to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, this is where it is. It's highlighted. It's like telling me all the differences. I think another big moment was in our policy and document and evidence generation side, where we could do edits across multiple documents. And we could basically be like, hey, let us show you like the diff view, and we can do it across multiple different documents. And how do we do that? That was like an exciting one. I think the voice one was kind of an unexpected. We haven't shipped that one, but it was kind of one where I was like, oh, wow, like I just hadn't been following voice that closely. And I was shocked how good it was. One of our engineers was like, I'm going to call you, pick up the phone. And like, I just picked it up and it was like, let me take you through a tabletop exercise. I was like, oh my gosh, no, did you do this? He's like, yes, yes. And so I just like walked through it. And I think it was like another kind of aha moment for me where I was like, oh, wow, what are all the different spots? And then I started thinking about like auditor interviews and like other places where this could like be helpful.
Do you find that you're constantly prototyping and testing out some of these new tools? Is that something that's become an ingrained habit?
I mean, for me, it has. I'm pretty hands-on person and like leader. Like I feel like from a management philosophy, if you can't like do the work, like I feel like everyone's an IC, no matter what level of management, you need to have things you own and do. And I feel like I have to be in the product and talking to customers. So I try to cut a lot of time out of every day, just like use our product, play with it, and then play with other things. And so it could be competitors, but also far off things where I'm just like, oh, great, here's 5 new AI tools and startups that came. I think this is one of the things that pushed us kind of early on to adopt, V0 and a bunch of other AI tools, of us trying to think about, even if I started as like an engineer, I became like a PM like early on, and thinking about especially how to help PMs that didn't come from a computer science background like me, of like, how do we help them be more productive? Like one of my like catchphrases internally is like, writing is thinking, but seeing is believing. And so like, I still think there's a good amount of writing you need to go do. I'm not a fan of like huge PRDs, but I think there's like tight, good writing that forces people to think through things. But like, man, when people read a PRD, it's like you can walk away with 6 people with 6 different ideas of like what we're building. Like it's going to narrow the scope, and it's going to force a lot of mental rigor into the business model and priorities and user problems. But like, what could that be? And I think it empowers PM and design to work even more closely. So design doesn't feel super disconnected of what's in the PM's mind. They can go back and forth and collaborate. So I like to spend a lot of time in those tools and find like what's out there. Like V0 is what we're using today, but we have a bunch of the team using like Lovable. People are using like Figma Make. We have, or just like Figma AI on like the design team. And, whether it be voice transcription tools are a big thing for me too. Like I've got a dog. I take my dog on walks a couple times a day. I like to just kind of like, probably my neighbors think I'm weird, but like just talk to myself while like I'm doing it and like voice transcribe it, and then have that reduce that back down to notes. And then when I come back at my desk, I can be like, oh, I've already started on this document, and you don't get stuck on that blank page wordsmithing, trying to make it perfect. And I can just kind of like, I've got this stream of consciousness that I can now convert into something that's more helpful to people more quickly.
What tool do you use for that? Just out of curiosity, because I find myself doing the same thing, and I have a particular tool that I am very fond of.
I think like Super Whisper has been like the big one that I've been using recently. I don't know if I've experimented with a lot. What's your favorite?
I use Lightpage. So Lightpage it's an iPhone app, and also they have a web app. One of my friends, Kasra, built it. I find the transcription quality is much better than most tools that I've used, and the AI assistant is incredible. It seems to understand what I'm talking about and be able to just grok what I'm talking about much better than other tools as well. And sometimes it'll just freak me out by referencing something that I talked about like 2 weeks ago and tie it in with the things I'm discussing today. And it's just kind of a mind blowing experience. Like, oh, wow, you remembered that I had this thing today, and you said, good luck on this interview, and you remembered that this was happening today. I find that it's really, really, really good at just mimicking maybe a therapist. I think it's really a therapist in the end. So I think that's also how they brand themselves. But I use it as a general note taker app while I'm just walking around.
Yeah, I'll check that one out. Like, I feel like I've always expected ChatGPT to be better at this than it is. I feel like it always kind of stumbles for me when I'm like going into voice mode and trying to get it to do transcription and produce a document. And it does know a lot about me and has some good memory, but it hasn't connected in the same way. We also use Granola a lot internally for like note taking, and that's been like transformative. It's been one of the tools that I think everyone at the company has just been like, oh my God, I am like instantly more productive, like having this there. And it's made my interviews so much better as well. Like, I feel like I can be more directly engaged. I'm a heavy kind of like note taker person because I feel like it's easy for me to forget specifics. And so during an interview, I feel like my brain's always running two threads at the same time. I'm like taking notes and trying to capture things, think about what's coming next, and then like talking to the person and wanting to be like fully present and engaged. And I think this lets me just be a lot more present and engaged and just have short little, notes there that will kind of guide Granola and how I want them to be structured and templates.
Granola comes up all the time. It might be the most loved AI application that I've seen in recent times. So shout out to Granola. Okay, so I want to dig into this convergence of engineering, product, and design in organizations, something that we're seeing across many different organizations, Vanta, I'm assuming as well. How would you describe the differences between the product function at Vanta today versus a product function that you worked in, let's say, 6 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is our ability to probably quickly prototype and move faster. We talked some about V0. There's a bunch of great tools there as well that people can use just to kind of like quickly make something, even if you're a less technical product manager, which I think is like really helpful. I just find that a lot of the times what you're trying to understand early on in product discovery for a new product is like, does the idea work? And you don't necessarily need the best, most polished design, just having some simple wireframes. So we built toolkits internally that make it very easy, where there's some Figma templates that you can take. So it's automatically going to be a close enough style to Vanta. The tools are getting better all the time and they can quickly prototype. Some of our PMs that kind of started as engineers have done insanely impressive, very detailed, like full walkthrough everything. But even our ones that are like, I've never written a line of code before, PMs are able to like be productive. I think the other big thing we did internally was we set up a bunch of Gong listeners. And one of our, again, another PM who's like a former engineering manager wrote some code that enabled us to not only have Gong listeners, but then to like parse out specific competitor mentions. And then we can go ahead and talk to it about certain areas. So if we're like, hey, we're investing more in our risk management product, pull me all the feedback we've got about risk management, give me those video clips. So instead of like a seller, sellers are great. What they write in like win-loss reports, they don't always fill them out. When they do, it might not be exactly what a product person needs out of it. So being able to know like this phrase was mentioned or this type of phrase, which AI can help with, where it's not like an exact max search, is there. And then you can just jump right to the clip and see, I feel like has made product discovery and improvement just fundamentally better than it was before. Like when I think about, years ago, you're trying to schedule more calls with customers. We still do that. You're still walking them through prototypes and talking, but just being able to pull that out of the massive conversations that like pre-sales and post-sales and CSMs are like having all the time is really helpful.
Are PMs also shipping code at Vanta today?
Well, we have a couple that were former engineers. So like I kind of put them in a special bucket. One of them was actually a former Vanta engineer as well. So they have definitely shipped some code. I don't think we've had any of our PMs that weren't literally initially hired as an engineer at Vanta ship code. We have definitely had designers now ship PRs, which is great for like, they were more like humble, simple styling changes, but like meaningful. And it's one of the things I've talked to Deb, who we have an amazing head of design, Deb. And like when I talk to her is like, hey, how are we cranking up by the end of the year, more designers being able to do PRs? Definitely excited to see PMs kind of go more in that direction as well. And then the engineering team just uses these tools all the time. I'd say the biggest shift that I don't know if it surprised me, but it kind of did, is the shift to Claude Code and preferring terminal. I feel like has been pretty huge. Like I still feel like a lot of people are in Cursor, but like they're using Claude Code and like preferring that terminal interaction pattern a lot more. And all these things will probably ebb and flow. There will be new things coming out. We use Codex, we use Windsurf, we use Cursor. Not as much GitHub Copilot, but there's definitely still people that use it. But I'd say Claude Code seems to be the thing that just a lot of people are really gravitating to and enjoying it. And we're spending more time restructuring our code base as well. I know a lot of other companies are doing this, and we haven't yet found at this point that there's like code-based restructuring you have to do that specific to AI. There's like Cursor rule files and things like that, and Claude Code, you drop in certain kinds of markdown files that's helpful. But to me, just making it more usable for even a human engineer actually makes it more usable for everyone. So we've definitely been investing a lot more in dedicated engineering initiatives to make it easier for everyone to understand and build the product. And we've seen AI code generation like improve along with that.
Yeah, Claude Code is incredible. These things are cyclical, but as of right now, our Cursor usage has gone down to basically zero because we're just using VS Code with Claude Code or Claude Code and pure terminal. So yeah, Claude Code, super excited. We're also doing an episode with somebody on the Claude Code team soon as well to dig into that. Okay, so you mentioned that instead of writing these long PRDs and that being the foundation for a new product or feature that the team might pursue, you're jumping directly into prototypes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You also have shared on maybe a different podcast episode something along the lines of show, test, learn, your methodology for PMs on how exactly to approach the product process. Can you describe that in a bit more detail? And the question that comes to mind for me, is there a risk of constraining the creativity and the realm of possibility for where a specific feature should head if you're jumping into a more opinionated part of the process, like the prototyping, before flushing out some more of those possible workflows or user flows beforehand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for us we definitely, when we talk about prototyping, it's not that we have the exact solution in mind. Like one thing that's big on me is like divergent thinking is like a phrase I'll say a lot, which is I want to look at 5 or 6 different approaches to something. And then I would much rather move from 5 or 6 to like 3 to 1. I also think it helps teams and people like designers and PMs not get their identity attached too much to an individual solution, which I think can produce this negative thing where it's like something's getting criticism. It's an easy human thing to like take that as your personal criticism versus like I produced multiple things. Which one do we like the best versus the thing I spent all my time on is now being criticized. So I think there's like a human dynamic that like helps you move faster there as well. And it's nice to be able to like show customers sometimes if you're not sure multiple. So when we do prototypes, it's often not just like, oh, we know what we need to go do and we're down the path. It's often like there's multiple different approaches. Like when I think about what we were doing for document generation and evidence generation for policies, we had a very simple one that was like Mad Libs. Do you remember like Mad Libs as like a kid? You know what I mean? Where it's like fill in the blank templates. We had one that was like super heavy chat where it was like you're kind of telling it. We had one where you could control tone and details and all these other ones. And we had one that was more this hybrid approach where it's like, we're going to give you a couple of questions and kind of fill in the blank. And we ended up walking different customers of different sizes, like, hey, startup founders, engineers that are not security experts, what do you think about these? Which one of these works best for you? And then upmarket customers, what works best for you? We're like, you've been doing GRC for like 20 years and know it extremely well. Like what helps you be more productive? Part of this could be like who I am. I love design, like to the, I think our designers feel activated by this, but like, I definitely set expectations for like, I'm going to leave comments in your Figma file. And like, that shouldn't be considered like a bad thing. So I just feel like actually understanding what a customer is going to see. A big part of this to me is also when I think about how we've changed that process for PMs is like the value statement up front. Some of my worst experiences as a PM, if I think about areas where like I did poorly or my team did poorly, was we didn't spend enough time thinking about how we're going to communicate the value to the customer in that demo moment and everything. And then you build this awesome feature that's a great idea. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh shit, how are we actually going to like charge for this? Like, how are we going to go talk about it to a customer? Like, we all know it well and got so excited and we went off. So I think front loading that is really helpful. So you can run those tracks in parallel. Like, marketing can start building collateral and thinking about what they need to go do to kind of build for a launch event if it is a bigger feature like that. So I think those have been definitely areas where, we've leaned in more and kind of like adjusted. And like you said, it's like, get to the prototype. We'll try a bunch of different ones. I just think like there's nothing like hearing from a customer, and you can feel it usually pretty viscerally. Like, are their eyes lighting up or are they not? Are they like, and one of the things I try to ask customers as well is like, okay, great. Did this make your life better? Hopefully, yes. Like, what is your imagination of like a 10x version of this? And it doesn't have to be like a design aesthetic 10x, but just like, do you want a world in which you don't ever have to go do this at all? Like, what is the like, take all limitations off and tell me like, what is the real solution? And sometimes it's like, this entire process is like effed and like, I just never want to go do it. And I was like, okay, well, where do you want to be spending your time? And they're like, actually, it's on this thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So one, can we eliminate this process or not? A lot of times you can't, or at least it's going to take a while. So how do we automate this and de-emphasize it? And how do we start building to this new thing, which is where you wish you were spending your time and you actually get security? Because I think probably anyone who's worked at least a larger company knows there's an unfortunate amount of kind of like theater along with security and process and documentation and things. And I want to like drive that to zero and let the security team spend time on like what actually is going to impact customers and like the real security of their product. And so making sure we're balancing kind of both of those and asking those like expanding questions is really helpful.
I absolutely love the idea of creating multiple prototypes at once. I think that's great tactical advice for any company, and it forces that divergent thinking, like you had mentioned as well. You also touched on the idea that you're able to, in parallel, have the marketing team put together collateral and really accelerate the process of getting user feedback. What type of collateral is the marketing team able to work on concurrently?
Yeah. I think when PM and PMM, assuming you have those as like discrete, and I know some more consumer companies like Airbnb combine them, but like for us in enterprise SaaS, I think it's helpful to have the separation there. For us, it's like once they can know the value statement and like what we're trying to go do, which persona we're targeting, how we're roughly starting to think about pricing and packaging, and we have these discussions together, and then they can start to see the feature, because usually a lot of PMM is usually less technical than PM will be, right? And some of the sells we've done, especially at GitHub, are like highly technical, you know what I mean? But even in Vanta are like somewhat technical. And so I think the more we can show them the prototype and the features, they can start to think of like, oh, how would this go into like a demo video? What things would we want to go update on the product page? Oh, are we creating a new band on the product page, or are we rethinking the whole thing and like we need to go redo it all because, this feature fundamentally changes how you would do, third-party risk management, or how you think about, internal risk management, or how you think about like running your audit program. And so it helps us get an idea of like the tier of that release and then all the impacting work. And then they can kind of go back and be like, okay, if we are doing this big thing, how many kind of bands in the marketing page do we need? Do we think we need a demo video to really talk about this, and like a hype video? What would be the interesting moments of those animation? Because I do think it's important that when you're on a marketing page to actually be able to see the product and know like what the hell the thing is and like what it looks like. I also think you can fall into the trap of making everything an exact screenshot of the product, and then people's eyes glaze over because there's too much detail. So a lot of the time we can start asset production on things that are simplified UI of like the concepts that we want to go do and little animations, and have those running while we're building the feature. So you don't end up in this kind of big serialized thing where it's like, hey, we're done building the feature. Let's go toss it over the fence to like the marketing and sales team, and they have to go figure it out. And now the actual delivery to customers like super delayed. And like, I don't do this perfectly all the time. I'm not going to say like, hey, I've got the perfect system and everyone at Vanta does it great. But it's definitely something that I think we have done better than I've ever done at any other company, and continue to like really focus on. And I think it's something that it's easy to like overlook, but it actually slows down your shipping velocity. Even if it doesn't slow down your shipping velocity, I think it slows down your shipping impact. Because like one of the things you have to think about is you can ship a ton of features. Like, I don't know what we're at now, like 120 or so features a quarter. There's like a ton. And it is easy for our sales and marketing team just to get overwhelmed by the change log of everything that's going on. So we need to be really intentional about like rolling those up, being clear about the moments, how we're talking to a customer, what are big differentiators, what are big durable ones, how they're impacting there, what are little small things that are like super important because they're like paper cuts, but they're more like a, once you get in the product and you've already bought it, like a post-sales NRR satisfaction thing, and maybe some of those you shout from the rooftops, but probably a lot of them you don't.
Yeah. And the time savings seem evident. You're able to save a lot of time taking this approach, but the additional benefit seems like you're also getting feedback and being forced to think more clearly about those value propositions as well, since you're front loading things like thinking through a demo script, for example.
I agree. And I think when you're launching brand new products, we have this kind of product stages framework that we use internally. I think not just having marketing involved, like what I talked about there is great for established products, but if you're really trying to break into like a brand new segment, having a really good technical, passionate, seller or sales leader. Like we have this guy, Eric Martin, that's been at Vanta forever. He's phenomenal. And he helps leads our specialty sales team and many other things. And just like really loves talking to customers, is technical and gets in. And like the relationship he has with our marketing team, with our EPD team on like all new products is just like fundamentally to successfully launching them, because we have to have that type loop of like, show the prototype, we're building something, they're getting into it. Is the pitch working? And he can sniff out when it's like, actually it's the product not working versus it's the pitch versus like, actually we just haven't refined the sales process and there's like a sales process thing. So I think just keeping those things tight. Like when I think about what got me so excited when I moved from like Microsoft to GitHub, and then what got me even more excited as I moved to Vanta is trying to build that clear cross-company collaboration, and there's always areas where everyone can do better, where I can go do better there. But I think when you get into these specific products and you find those groups, it's like, yeah, there's the EPD triad, but like, especially for new things like marketing and sales and everyone really getting in and trying to make that customer successful and like really collaborating and pushing each other hard, asking the hard questions. That's what makes it actually come to life as a like full business outcome and a real impact, and not just like an awesome product. Because like I think we've all used and maybe even worked on awesome products, but they didn't turn into successful businesses.
Yeah. What are some of the ingredients for making this cross-functional, cross-company collaboration as effective as possible? I'm imagining AI literacy is an important part of it as well.
Definitely. And like, Stevie Case, like our amazing like CRO, and has led like a huge revenue kind of like AI initiative for us, whether it's using Dust, the way we think about collaborating on like customer feedback. Some of the Gong stuff I talked about is not just used by EPD, but it is also used by the sales and marketing team. We've kind of transformed how we think about, or maybe started to transform how we even think about like win rates and things like that. Like I said before, it's like what a seller will remember and is there versus what's in Gong is different. And we can see it in the calls. And it's like, oh, wow, we're in these competitive deals that sometimes we didn't know were competitive. You know what I mean? From just looking at the raw win-loss data. And that's helpful for the sales team. It's helpful for marketing. It's helpful for us. So I think mining the voice transcripts, whether it be Gong or whatever you're using, has been extremely like helpful for us. I think the special ingredients is really just building that team identity of like, hey, we have a new product. There is going to be someone from sales, someone from marketing, someone from PM, engineering and design. And like, you are the group that's going to make this successful. And how do we make it successful? In understanding how much revenue is a leading or lagging indicator. Like in those early days, it's definitely kind of a lagging indicator. You're like trying to sign some design partners. The focus really is on, do we have the right pitch? How are we doing that? And yeah, I think the AI probably pieces that are most helpful is all the voice call, transcription, understanding, learning, and then just the rapid prototyping. Like even if someone in sales can go into like Figma and be like, what if we change it this way or whatever else, and can like show a customer or do that live, I'm like, great, let's go do it. I don't know, like EPD, definitely not me, is not the like arbiter of like every good idea at the company. You know what I mean? Like anyone can come up with a great idea. I just want us to find them as a group and like, yeah, and deliver them.
So we didn't touch too much on how the design function maybe has evolved as a result of some of these changes. What does the design function look like now that the line is starting to blur between product and design?
Yeah, I think for us, to some degree, I think design is getting even more empowered, like overall. Um, I would say with product, yes, they can do prototyping that they couldn't do before. But I think for us, product is like very focused on, hey, is the customer excited? What's the core value we're getting from them? How are we thinking about the pricing and packaging this and delivering the entire end-to-end experience? Where I think design now, the kind of superpower that they have is having a better way to collaborate with PM because they can kind of hand off visuals both ways. Like PMs can more easily kind of produce a visual and then design can go back and forth. On the design side, I think whether it be we spend our time in Figma, so Figma AI has been really helpful for us just to be able to build things. We have designers that are building prototypes in V0 as well and going off on their own, but we pull design all the way into like early customer discovery, drive it. My general thought on like ratios is I always want more designers than PMs. And this comes from someone who like spent a bunch of time as like a PM in their career. I think you can get more negative side effects in a company when you have more PMs if they don't have enough to do because they're usually very influential and can drive a lot of like excitement around new ideas. But if you don't have people to go act on those ideas, then everyone gets confused about priorities. So I think kind of keeping PMs on the edge of like the max of what they can handle is like more how I like to write it. And then letting design really be empowered to own the experience. So I think design actually overlapping more with engineering is something that we're encouraging a lot. I know some companies like I think Vercel and other companies have design engineers dedicated. I think that that's an area where we're seeing more. We've now seen some PRs from our design team, which we have never seen to my knowledge in the history of Vanta, and we're now getting them now, and we can push that forward. Having slightly more technical people, but AI tools have kind of enabled it. So like my vision for design is like they own the front end experience and front end quality. Like I would love to get to the point where it's like I go to my head of design and I'm like, hey, we want to go do dark mode, or we want to go optimize this experience, or we think there's an issue here, or like there's quality misalignment issues. Like I love engineers. I started there. Most of them are not design minded, and I've definitely been in some of them. And I was like, can't you see this thing is like misaligned and these colors are different or whatever else? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And like letting design truly own that and collaborate it. So I see it's kind of like design is getting faster at design because they can prototype more quickly and go do that. They're having a better handoff with PM because PMs can also give them visuals, and there's less kind of white space of like, what are you talking about in this document? And then I think they're pushing more into delivery, into engineering. And I'm excited to see them truly own the front end experience and engineering be more thinking about the kind of API down layer. And it won't always be that perfect line, but I think that's the direction that I'm excited to see the team move in. And I've definitely seen other companies pursue and do successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And things are changing really quickly. A lot of folks are struggling to keep up with the incredibly rapid progression of technology, specifically in the AI space. It seems like every week, some weeks more than others, we're seeing groundbreaking changes. What have been the challenges, I guess the biggest challenges in managing this AI transformation process?
I think the biggest one is the priority of when to invest in some of these AI initiatives versus like boring standard SaaS features. Like I would still say a lot of what we do is like boring standard SaaS features, and those are still really, really important. I'm being like, a bit like silly with like how I'm saying that, but if you want to look at them even as AI derivative features, let's say in a world where everything's agentic and tools, what are the tools they're using? Those are still going to be deterministic code that is probably running to go do that. Maybe some very far out world will have it automatically generating the code for you to go do these things dynamically. That feels pretty far off. You never know how far off, but it feels at least a breakthrough away to me. And so that's a big thing on my mind is really just, hey, there actually is just a lot of work you need to go do around scale and quality of the core code base and product. A lot of the times customers are asking us like, hey, I wish your permissions were more flexible here. Or think about like our risk management product, we're doing like risk hierarchy and risk roll up, and AI is helping us prototype those features faster, build them. Designers are starting to ship things, engineers are shipping faster, but not every feature there is an AI feature. But we're definitely going in and asking every time, like, what is the thing that we could go do with AI? Can that help us solve some of the problems? And then we have things like the Vanta agent or policy generation or vendor risk management or questionnaires where it's like, oh, wow, like this is all about large text and automating large bits of text or verifying screenshots or doing these other things. That's a home run for AI. Everyone should be focused on that. So I think there's a lot of times people feel like it needs to be like 90% of what they do. And I think it's usually less than that. But another way to think about it is a lot of what you're building is a foundation for AI agents to work on top of in the future, because there still is these core capabilities you're going to need about a page that lets you create a custom test that runs a specific query, you know what I mean, to tell you if like all your S3 buckets are encrypted or not. And like, you're still probably going to need that page, even though in the future, I'm guessing you're going to type into a prompt. At least like one of the things we've prototyped and working on is like you type it in there and it creates it for you, you know, but you still need some of these fallback experiences, and you still need those capabilities underneath to like do the thing, right?
Yeah. I imagine an important part of being able to understand the art of the possible and also the art of what's not possible using the current state of AI tools is having a good understanding of how these tools work and the tools that are available at your disposal. How are you going about in making sure that folks have that level of understanding? You mentioned your designers are using V0. You mentioned product folks are using V0 and other AI tools as well. So getting the tools in their hands, I'm sure, is one part of that playbook. Are there other things that you're doing to help folks just get very intimately familiar with the art of the possible with AI?
Yeah. I mean, I think we cover it in kind of like all hands, the EPD specific one and the company one a lot. I think just producing a lot of internal Loom videos on how to go do this is really helpful for people. Like, I think at least if I go back to like the PM one with V0, we had a couple technical people that jumped on it instantly. We had a lot of non-computer science background PMs that were just like, I remember them coming to me and just being like, I know you said you want us to do this, but FYI, like I didn't study computer science, so I can't do this. And I was like, you can. And so like I actually sat down and myself like created our initial templates and did like a Loom video of how easy it is and how to derive from my template and to be going. And then we did a couple working sessions with people where we're like, hey, let's get together and go build something. So we do a lot of AI hackathons, and it doesn't have to be the engineers that write the code. And so the output could be like a prototype that PM or marketing go ahead and builds together. So I think having that has been there. They're not happening like, it's not like every week there's like a hackathon or something, but we definitely have a lot of them and try to keep the energy and excitement high of what is possible and tell people to go push boundaries. You don't have to stay completely within the box. And I think that's when we start to get the more interesting areas. And then things like there's a lot of technologies that like aren't quite there, but I just want someone to keep building with them. So in the moment when they are there, we're ready to ship. And it's not like, oh, computer use is now perfect. And we're like thinking about how to build the infrastructure toward that. Like it feels like it's on the trajectory. So like, let's be investing in it constantly now. And maybe it's not something we feel comfortable shipping to every customer at every size now, but like we're continuing to invest in it.
So if you were advising a traditional company that was just starting out in their AI journey, what would be your, let's say, first 3 recommendations to that organization?
I think my first one would be to look at the key customer problem that you want to go solve, and then go look at the data that you have to go make that a good experience. And do you have good data? Do you have clean data? Is it accessible in a way that you can actually build like a strong foundation? Do you need subject matter expertise? How do you get them into that kind of eval loop to make sure that the results are at high quality for all those different pieces? And then I would say, find a set of customers or design partners and just start working with them really closely. If it's an internal tool, it's like, who's the team you're building it for? And just keep that constant feedback loop going and find people that are excited about AI. Like they're going to hit roadblocks. You want it on the customer side and on the building side, but people that just want to push past it and are going to think about not just what they can do today, but like in the future. And I know it's like, a lot of people are excited about AI, but not everyone is like big on it. Some engineers are just like, hey, I want to do that really hard, fundamental, like algorithmic change and everything like that. Probably not the person you want to put on this problem for like an early incubation, getting it started. And yeah, I would say the only thing I would avoid, and we did this as well, is picking something that's so broad and ambiguous that it kind of falls into that boil the ocean. Like, you want something that you can report up to like the leadership, especially if it's like a larger company, around like success and progress, and keep that tempo going. It's a phrase I use internally. Like, when projects start running a long time, they just start to stink. You know what I mean? And like, people want to, and then people lose confidence and excitement and everything. So having milestones where you can break it up, sharing success, make it always feel like you're building momentum and not like it's taking forever, and I think that's like, there's a kind of an internal communication side to that as well.
Love that advice. Okay, another rapid fire question for you here is, between your time at GitHub, let's say post Copilot, and your time now at Vanta, how's your approach to leveraging AI changed, if at all?
I think at GitHub, we were obviously super focused on developers and developer productivity and like writing great code for customers, generating tests and things. I think for Vanta, the unique thing has been we just have a less technical user, but we have a lot of deep subject matter expertise that is not widely known. So I think for us, maybe it's similar to like a Harvey AI or someone like that, where technical accuracy is like extremely important. And the nice thing you have with code generation, which is one of the reasons why I think it's been successful, is most of the time you have a CI/CD feedback loop. So if the code is like good or bad instantly. You don't always know that if you're generating a legal document or an audit document or everything, and you don't want a customer to find that out during their audit or in a lawsuit or something. And so I think for us, understanding how subject matter experts are so important, focusing even more on quality, and making sure the AI experiences are even more accessible and building trust for a group that could be more skeptical. Like, I would say, generally lots of security, and the GRC side of security probably isn't the biggest on wanting to transform exactly the way we work and adopting like every new bit of like AI technology. They're probably like, oh, okay, what are the security risks associated with this? Should we be doing it? So building that confidence has been really important as part of it.
Yeah, and I think as the stakes increase for your AI outputs being correct, the importance of evals also increases as well. And so you talked a bit about the robustness of your evaluation process, and especially having those subject matter experts in the loop. That's such a critical part of deploying AI in some of these high stakes settings. We work with a lot of companies in health tech, and obviously the stakes are quite high in the health tech space for compliance reasons and for safety reasons. And the way that companies are going about that is by having the robust eval processes in place, especially ones that involve subject matter experts, to create those golden data sets and to validate the quality of those evaluation metrics. So couldn't agree with you more there. What's one capability that you're most excited about that Vanta's working on and maybe coming down the pike soon?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of breadth that we're bringing to the Vanta agent now. The fact that, what we launched in June was great. It was very focused on policies and finding inconsistencies across your policies and program. We are now expanding this into every other aspect. So whether that be, it will now have awareness of all of your risks, your controls, your vendors, your assets, all the other pieces, and then adding new memory capabilities. So these will all be things we're announcing very soon at our Vanta Delivers in like the next like week or two. And I'm super excited to kind of see it really kind of go to the next level, especially when I think about like startup founders. I think about, you have such a hard job finding product market fit and finding customers and building an amazing product, and you want to pour all your energy into that. And what I want Vanta to go do is to help you build that security program with the least amount of effort. You still need to know your security program, you know what I mean? But Vanta can help you build it, help make sure those commitments are right sized to you, and help you successfully get through this audit with the least amount of kind of like headache and work possible, and as fast as you want to. If you want to go 2 weeks, great, we'll get you there in 2 weeks. If you want to take longer because like, it's like the priorities can change or shift or whatever else, like you can take your time as well, and making sure we're doing everything we can there to like really drive that through. So I think this notion of Vanta does it for you, whether it be making you fully prepped with like a full AI audit analysis, the agent going through and helping you create all these different evidence while still making you aware of all the commitments you're making, and then us providing the monitoring. So when Vanta tells you, hey, you need to go fix this thing, you know how to go fix it, how to go do it. We've already generated the code for you. It's right there. So a lot of that are capabilities we have, but I think the agent getting even more broad and being able to generate even more of this is exciting. And yeah, making it more of just this holistic experience is what's like really getting me up every single day.
Very exciting. Well, stay tuned for Vanta Delivers, probably right around the time that this episode drops.
Yeah. It'll be right around here. We do it each quarter. I guess my only other plug is like we're hiring. We're hiring a lot. Vanta has grown a ton in the last year. If I think about EPD, we've been hiring, maybe 50 people almost a quarter. So we're growing a lot. Everything is going great. Customers are super excited about the products we're building, and we just want to build more and do more. And there's a really AI native and first culture here of how we're approaching product development, how we're approaching sales and marketing and go-to-market and finance and all the different pieces. And yeah, would love to chat with anybody that's interested about being a part of that.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link to the Vanta careers page in the show notes as well. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
AutoSkills helps teams go from AI curious to AI ready. We run tailored workshops to uncover where AI has the biggest impact in your business, whether that's automating repetitive tasks, cutting hours out of your daily workflows, or choosing the right mix of tools and custom solutions. It's practical, hands-on, and built to get your team using AI for work that matters. Book your free 30-minute AI readiness audit at autoskills.ai.